Hi, and welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to talk about key insight 1, population growth and increase in urbanization and aging. So, if you look at this graph, it depicts the time it took for the world population to increase by 1 billion. And if you look at the first billion, it's estimated that humanity reached first billion in the year 1803. And it took 124 years from 1803 to 1927 to reach a population of 2 billion people. And after that, it took just 33 years from 1927 to 1960 to reach 3 billion. And from 1960 onwards, human population has been increasing by 1 billion people every less than 15 years. So 4 billion was reached in just 15 years, 5 billion was reached in just 12 years, 6 billion in 12 years, 7 billion reached in 12 years, 8 billion will be reached in 13 years, 9 billion in 14, and 10 billion is expected to reach in 18 years, and 11 billion is expected to reach in 32 years. So from 1927 onwards, we have been seeing the decline of time that it takes for human population to increase by 1 billion people. So this puts a huge burden on the finite resources that's available on the planet, and we need much more better systematic ways of managing those finite resources in a much more equitable manner. And if you look at this graph, we can see the number of deaths per year worldwide. So it's just been hovering about 50 million from 1960 onwards until about 2020. And then we are seeing a gradual but a sharp increase in the number of deaths worldwide. So this is due to many factors like dietary conditions, non-communicable diseases like cancer, stroke, heart diseases, and things like that, as well as other diseases. Moving on, if you look at this world map, we can see the global population growth rate in 2020. So if you look at African region countries, we are seeing about 2 to 4% of increase in the annual population change. And if you look at European countries and even countries like Japan, we are seeing that being reduced, meaning we have a very high death rate and the population is decreasing by around 0 to negative 2%. And if you look at the regional population, the Asian region has the most amount of people living, especially if you look at countries like India and China, who each have more than a billion people. And we can also see an increment of people in the African region as well, when continents like Europe is declining and Latin America is slightly increasing along with North America. So talking about the global population, the global human population is expected to reach 9.7 billion by the year 2050. And we know that with increased population, there is also additional negative consequences. So things like land degradation, limited availability of land for agricultural purposes, fragmentation of farm plots, increased emissions, soil erosion, deforestation, as well as exploitation of natural resources. So it's putting an additional pressure on the finite amount of resources we have on this planet, and also challenging the systems in place to utilize those resources. So for example, let's take agriculture, and if you have a farm, you need to improve your capacity to meet the demand, the growing demand, but also you're being faced with an additional challenge of the unavailability of land for agricultural purposes because it's used for residential purposes, so things like housing. And also we're seeing increased urbanization, so people moving into big cities for additional higher income and better quality of life. So higher demand in urban areas, which draws resources out of rural areas, and people in urban areas will have a higher purchasing power because of additional disposable income. and the growing urban consumer demands of better nutritional food are factors which impact this challenge. Also, we are seeing increased aging population. So, with advances in healthcare and advance in things like genetics, things like disease diagnostic, we will see an increased aging population. So, with increased aging population, there comes unique challenges which are inherited to that particular demographic. For example, they will require things like assistance in mobility. So we might have to design cities in a way that accommodates those people's needs. And also, we'll be seeing an increased demand for diets which cater to elderly people. So basically, if you have certain conditions like, let's say, for example, diabetes, you might want to prefer red rice over white rice and things like that. So the dietary requirements are different for aging population and elderly people. So you might have to cater towards those specific needs as well. And also the impact on the workforce to produce agriculture. So because of an aging workforce, we might not have that much of people to work in the agriculture because those people will have their kids and other nursing facilities to look after them. And also, the young people might not have the complete experience or the know how to work on agriculture. So, we are seeing potentially catastrophic situations in terms of transitioning the workforce from one generation to another. Well, that's about it for Key Insight 1: Population growth and increase in urbanization and aging. I'll see you on another lecture.